Cecil B. DeMille.
DeMille really was the driving force behind Hollywood for 40 years.
Film purist will recognize the name, but the general popcorn-munching, thrill-seeking, movie-going public may not realize Cecil Blount DeMille is the founding father of the film spectacular.
Without Cecil B. DeMille, there would be no Hollywood. It's really that fundamental.
But wait, there's more. 175 miles north of Los Angeles, a complete movie set from decades ago lies buried in the shifting sand dunes. This is the story of DeMille's Lost City. A young independent filmmaker, Peter Brosnan, discovered something in the sand dunes of Guadalupe, California.
One night over probably a few too many beers, an old buddy of mine from film school, from the NYU Film School, told me an absolutely cockamamie story about Cecil B. DeMille burying sphinxes in the middle of California. I thought he'd had a few too many. But then he showed me DeMille's autobiography, in which DeMille talks about filming the Ten Commandments in California.
Let's clarify that. The world knows the 1956 color version. We're talking here the original silent version.
Also partly in Technicolor, but yes, this is the original silent version. DeMille joked about archaeologists 1,000 years from now finding these sphinxes and thinking they had found some lost Egyptian civilization.
This line in the book, you picked up on this and said, hey, what if it really is all there?
What if it really is there? So one morning in 1983, in June, we went up to the site. Now, this was right after the first El Nino winter. There had been one storm after another coming in off the Pacific, pounding the coast, and fortunately for us, blowing about 4 or 5 feet of sand off the sand dune. So when we got out there, for the first time in 60 years, literally acres of statuary had been uncovered and was just looking up at us from the ground.
That must have been a very eerie, awesome sight all at the same time.
It was total Twilight Zone, and yet it was very exciting. We've also found a lot of bottles of 1920s cough medicine. Not because all those smokers had coughs, but because cough medicine was a way to get around prohibition in those days.
DeMille's credo was bigger is better. Big budgets, big productions, big pictures.
You know, before Hal Roach died, I interviewed him a few times, and I got to know him pretty well. Hal lived to be 100. He was the guy who put Laurel and Hardy together and made all the Our Gang movies, and he was a friend of DeMille. And he told me before DeMille, movies were some little thing that you would look at in a peep show, in a Nickelodeon, or maybe projected on the wall of the barn. DeMille blew out the walls. DeMille showed the world that movies could take us to another time and another place and make us believe that it was real. Nobody had done that before him, and I don't think anybody's ever done it better than him.
The dream to have this colossal soul-surviving set from the golden silent era excavated has been a 20-year-plus quest. And given economic times, the sands may keep their secret intact.
This is the last of the great sets from the Silent Age. That was a time in which the movies were discovering just how big they could be. Cecil B. DeMille very thoughtfully left in Guadalupe a virtual buried cinema history museum.
But Peter explains he's got another treasure already on film.
Using 16mm gear in the beginning and then later on videotape, we were able to get some magnificent interviews with people who worked with DeMille, some of the old cowboys who were chariot drivers on the film. Beatrice Joy was one of the stars of the film, a very prominent silent actress. I interviewed her in 1985, just as it turned out a few days before she passed away. And she told an amazing and wonderful story. DeMille wanted this story of the Exodus to have kind of a moral authenticity. So he recruited from Los Angeles about 200 elderly Orthodox Jews, and he brought them up to Guadalupe to, in effect, play their own ancestors. When they got there and they saw this magnificent set, they were so moved they sent back to Los Angeles for their grandchildren. Taking part in the Exodus in the film were several hundred elderly Orthodox Jews and their grandkids from Los Angeles. These were all recent immigrants from the Middle East, from Russia. They had survived unimaginable persecution.
Certainly.
For them, really, this was the Exodus. When they began marching out, they spontaneously burst into an ancient Hebrew chant about marching into freedom. And Beatrice Joy told us there was not a dry eye on the set.
What's the phrase, déjà vu all over again?
Indeed, yeah. Through the generosity of the DeMille family, I have finally gotten a grant so that I can put together the film that has been sitting in cans for 20 years. one of the great things about the digital revolution is you no longer need $250,000 to make a documentary. I can finish it now with my Macintosh. So my film will be finished, I hope, within the next year. This visual language, this language of zooms and pans and cuts and dissolves. That's the language. That language didn't always exist. It was worked out and invented by those early filmmakers, DeMille, Griffith, Eisenstein. It all began in those early days of Hollywood.
My thanks to Peter Brosnan for his personal insights here, and our thanks to the father of film and big productions, Cecil B. DeMille. Now go check out some of those classics.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
This is Mike Stewart.